When we are young, life feels like an endless circle of social gatherings, friendships, and constant connection. It's natural to want to be surrounded by others, to call friends over for dinner, to share stories and laughter freely in the comfort of our homes. Back then, sincerity and genuine warmth seemed to be the foundation of these relationships. But as the years pass and we accumulate life experiences, our perspective slowly changes. We begin to realize that the world isn't always as kind or straightforward as it seemed in youth. Genuine friendships become harder to find, replaced by polite facades and social expectations. This gradual shift leads many of us to prefer solitude, finding peace in quiet moments alone or with close family rather than in large gatherings. For those entering their middle and later years, solitude is not loneliness. It is a choice born from wisdom and a deeper understanding of life. It's a natural part of aging to move away from constant socializing and toward a lifestyle that values calm, meaningful connections over busy, sometimes draining interactions. In this video, we will explore why so many seniors embrace solitude and the reasons behind the changes in how we relate to others as we grow older. If you are not subscribed, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. 1. Young sociability and true friendship decline. When we look back on the tapestry of our lives, many of us remember a time when our homes were always filled with voices, sometimes loud, sometimes gentle, but always present. In our youth, friendship felt simple, almost effortless. On a Saturday afternoon, it wasn't unusual to call up an old friend and say, "Come on over. Let's have some coffee and catch up." Sometimes it was just a spontaneous invitation, sometimes it was planned, but either way, it was always welcomed. In those days, our homes were extensions of ourselves. The kitchen table was a place where secrets were shared and plans were made. The living room echoed with laughter, as stories, both big and small, were passed around like treasured heirlooms. There was a freedom to these gatherings, a sense that within these walls, we were safe from the world outside. We talked about everything and nothing at all, often losing track of time as one conversation bled into another. True friendship back then was about more than just shared experiences. It was about sincerity. There was a genuine warmth when friends entered our homes, a feeling that we were truly welcome in each other's lives. People went out of their way to help one another, whether it was moving a piece of heavy furniture, watching the kids for a few hours, or just showing up on a tough day with a casserole and a kind word. Perhaps it was the world we lived in then. People seemed less guarded, less concerned with appearances, and more interested in honest connection. There was an unspoken understanding that, in times of need, we could count on each other. If you were going through a rough patch, friends would show up, no questions asked. If you needed a place to stay for a night, there was always a spare couch or an extra bed ready. But as the years slipped by and the world changed, so did the nature of our friendships. Somewhere along the way, we began to notice subtle shifts in the way people related to each other. The invitations became less frequent, the conversations a little more cautious. What was once an open door now seemed, at times, like a carefully guarded gate. Part of this, perhaps, was simply the result of growing older. Responsibilities multiplied, careers took center stage, children demanded our attention, and life became more complicated. The simple act of inviting a friend over for a meal suddenly required careful planning, juggling busy schedules, and making sure everyone's needs were met. The spontaneity of youth faded into the background, replaced by calendars and to-do lists. But there was something else, too. The world outside was changing, and with it, the very fabric of our communities. Neighborhoods grew quieter as children moved away and new faces took their place. The sense of shared history that once bound neighbors together began to fray. People became more private, more cautious about letting others in, not just into their homes, but into their lives. Perhaps the most painful realization, for many of us, was that sincerity was no longer the norm. Instead, we saw a rise in polite facades and surface-level interactions. Social gatherings sometimes felt more like performances than genuine connections. There was pressure to present ourselves in a certain way, to keep up appearances, to avoid showing vulnerability. It became harder to know who truly cared and who was just being polite. We saw this shift not just in our own lives, but in the lives of those around us. Friends who once felt like family slowly drifted away, their visits growing less frequent until, one day, we realized it had been years since we last saw them. Sometimes, it happened gradually, a missed phone call here, a canceled dinner there. Other times, it was sudden, prompted by a disagreement or a misunderstanding that never quite healed. This is not to say that true friendship disappeared entirely. In fact, for those lucky enough to hold on to it, those relationships became even more precious. But there was an unmistakable sense that something fundamental had changed. The world no longer makes it easy to forge and maintain deep, sincere connections. As we entered our middle and later years, many of us found ourselves becoming more selective about the people we let into our lives. After decades of navigating the ups and downs of relationships, we learned to recognize the difference between those who truly cared and those who were simply passing through. We realized that not every invitation was extended out of genuine affection, and not every friendly gesture was sincere. This realization, while sometimes painful, brought with it a new kind of wisdom. We no longer felt the need to fill our days with endless social engagements or surround ourselves with a crowd just for the sake of it. Instead, we began to value quality over quantity, to cherish a handful of meaningful relationships rather than chasing after dozens of casual acquaintances. For many, this shift meant turning inward, finding comfort and fulfillment in solitude. What once might have felt like loneliness now became a source of peace. There was no longer any pressure to keep up with the Joneses or maintain appearances for the sake of others. We learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the simple joys of reading a good book, tending a garden, or just sitting on the porch and watching the world go by. At the same time, we developed a deeper appreciation for family. The bonds that held us together through thick and thin became more important than ever. We learned that while friendships might come and go, family remained a constant, a source of love, support, and understanding in a world that often felt uncertain. Still, it was hard not to mourn the loss of the easy camaraderie we once enjoyed. There were days when we missed the sound of laughter echoing through the house, the late-night conversations that stretched on for hours, the feeling of belonging to a close-knit community. But there was also a sense of gratitude for the friendships that lasted, for the memories we made, and for the lessons we learned along the way. Looking back, it's clear that the decline of true friendship was not just about changing times, but about personal growth as well. With age comes perspective, and with perspective comes the ability to see people and relationships for what they truly are. We learned that not every connection was meant to last forever, and that it was okay to let go of relationships that no longer brought us joy. For many of us, this meant embracing a new kind of friendship, one rooted in authenticity and mutual respect. These were the friendships that withstood the test of time, weathering storms and celebrating triumphs together. They may have been fewer in number, but they were richer in meaning. In the end, the journey from young sociability to the quieter rhythms of later life is a natural one. It's a path marked by change, reflection, and, ultimately, acceptance. While we may miss the days of crowded tables and endless conversation, we come to realize that there is beauty in simplicity, strength in solitude, and wisdom in choosing the company we keep. The decline of true friendship is not something to be feared, but rather a sign that we have grown, and in that growth, we find a new sense of peace, purpose, and contentment as we continue on the journey of life. 2. Changing lifestyle and preference for solitude in old age. As the years pass and the seasons of life turn, subtle but profound changes begin to shape the way we choose to live each day. What once felt essential, constant connection, lively gatherings, the familiar ritual of opening our homes to friends, gradually loses its urgency. Instead, a quieter rhythm takes hold, one marked by reflection, gentle routines, and the soft comfort of solitude. It's not that the world outside loses its beauty or that people become less important, but something inside us shifts. We find ourselves drawn more to moments of peace and less to the clamor of endless social activity. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. For many of us, this transition isn't sudden. It happens almost without our noticing, a gentle unfolding that comes with each new gray hair and every extra candle on the birthday cake. We wake up one morning and realize the phone rings less often. Invitations to big family barbecues or neighborhood potlucks grow fewer and farther between. At first, this can feel unsettling, even lonely. We may remember those earlier years when our schedules were packed, when weekends meant get-togethers and holidays meant a house full of laughter. Back then, it seemed we never had a quiet moment to ourselves. But as time goes by, we discover a strange relief in the silence. No longer do we feel pressured to attend every gathering or play host to every visitor. We begin to recognize the simple pleasure of having a cup of coffee by the window, watching the world wake up at its own pace. There is freedom in this slowness, a sense of reclaiming the hours of the day for ourselves, to fill as we please. For someone like Old Lou, a character so many of us can see a bit of ourselves in, these changes come naturally. Once the center of every social circle, he now finds joy in a different kind of company. His mornings are spent quietly in the garden, tending to tomatoes and beans, feeling the sun on his back. Afternoons are for sipping tea, listening to the birds, or perhaps flipping through a photo album filled with old faces and stories. On occasion, he'll meet a friend for lunch at a small cafe in town, but he rarely invites anyone home anymore. The house, once a hub of activity, has become a sanctuary, a place for rest, not performance. It's not just Old Lou who feels this way. As people enter their 60s, 70s, and beyond, many notice a shift in what they value and how they spend their time. The relentless pace of earlier decades no longer holds the same appeal. Where once we sought out busyness to fill our days and prove our worth, we now crave time for ourselves. We become more comfortable with the idea of simply being, of savoring the present rather than chasing after endless plans and obligations. There's a wisdom in this new way of living. We learn to recognize which relationships are genuine and which are kept alive only by habit or social obligation. We understand that it's not the number of people in our lives that matters, but the quality of those connections. Deep down, we know that not every friendship needs to be maintained, and not every social expectation needs to be met. Sometimes, the kindest thing we can do for ourselves is to step back, create a little distance, and allow life to slow down. Some might look at this retreat from social life and misunderstand it. They may wonder why their once sociable friend or relative now prefers to stay home, declining invitations or meeting only in public places instead of at home. "You used to be so warm and welcoming," they might say. What changed? The answer is rarely simple, but it usually comes down to experience. The more we see of the world, the more we realize that peace is precious, and that sometimes socializing comes at too high a price. Hosting guests, for example, can be physically demanding as we age. What was once a joy, cooking a big meal, cleaning the house, making sure everyone felt comfortable, now takes twice as much effort and energy. Even the thought of rearranging furniture or standing in the kitchen for hours can feel overwhelming. The risks, too, are different now. A misplaced step, a heavy dish, or an awkward conversation that leaves everyone feeling a little unsettled. It's not that we don't care about others. It's just that the cost of entertaining sometimes outweighs the pleasure. For many, home becomes a place of sanctuary and rest. It is where we can truly be ourselves, free from the need to impress or entertain. There's a deep comfort in being able to control our environment, to surround ourselves with the familiar. A favorite chair by the window, a stack of well-loved books, the quiet hum of the heater in winter. These small details become more important than the approval of others. They remind us that we have built a life worth savoring, one that no longer depends on the constant validation of a crowd. Of course, this doesn't mean we turn away from the world entirely. Most older adults still value the company of friends and family, but the way we relate to others changes. Instead of hosting big gatherings at home, we might meet for lunch at a local diner, take a walk in the park, or simply enjoy a quiet phone call. The key difference is that we choose when and how we connect, ensuring that our social interactions bring us joy rather than exhaustion. This preference for solitude is not about isolation or bitterness. In fact, for many, it is an act of self-care, a way of protecting our well-being and focusing on what truly matters. In solitude, we have space to reflect on our lives, to process memories both sweet and difficult, to find meaning in everyday moments. There is a richness in this quiet that can't be found in the noise of constant activity. Along the way, we may discover new hobbies or passions that were pushed aside in busier years. Some take up painting or writing, others return to music or start volunteering in the community. There's joy in learning to cook a new dish, in tending a garden, or in simply taking a daily walk and noticing the small changes each season brings. In solitude, our inner worlds expand, making room for creativity, gratitude, and peace. Family, too, takes on a different significance. With age comes the understanding that our time together is finite. We learn to cherish the moments we share, however simple. A Sunday dinner, a quiet afternoon with grandchildren, a long conversation with a sibling. These connections, more than any large party or formal event, become the heartbeat of our lives. We let go of the pressure to maintain a large circle and instead focus our energy on the few relationships that nourish us. And so, little by little, we create a life that fits us more comfortably than any we've lived before. It is not the life of constant motion and endless company that once seemed so important, but a quieter, richer existence. We become more attuned to our own needs, kinder to ourselves, and more at peace with the world as it is. We accept solitude not as a failure or a sign of loss, but as a reward for all we have been through, a gentle gift that allows us to savor the later chapters of our story with grace and contentment. In the end, the changing lifestyle and preference for solitude in old age are not just about slowing down, but about living more fully. It is about claiming the right to choose how we spend our days, who we spend them with, and what brings us joy. It is about understanding that solitude, when chosen freely, can be every bit as fulfilling as the busiest party or the loudest crowd. In this new season, we find ourselves again, and in doing so, we discover that the quiet life can be the most beautiful of all. 3. Reasons why the elderly avoid visiting others' homes. As we step into the later chapters of our lives, there are subtle shifts that go far beyond silver hair or an extra wrinkle around the eyes. Some of these changes catch us by surprise, like how our energy dips after an afternoon out, or how a noisy room can suddenly feel overwhelming. One of the most misunderstood changes, though, is the gradual reluctance, sometimes even discomfort, we feel about visiting other people's homes, especially as we grow older. It's not that we don't care about our friends, or that we're uninterested in keeping up relationships. In truth, the heart often longs for connection just as much as it did decades ago. But experience brings wisdom, and wisdom brings new priorities. For many seniors, the decision to visit less and stay home more is shaped by a mixture of practical realities and emotional insight, each one as real and important as the next. One of the first things that comes to mind is the simple fact that every household is different. Back when we were younger, it seemed like a thrill to drop by a friend's place on a whim, to be swept up in whatever was happening there. A spontaneous meal, a quick card game, a walk around the block. But as we age, we become much more sensitive to the rhythms and routines of other families. Maybe we've lived long enough to appreciate just how much work it takes to keep a household running. Or perhaps we know from personal experience that not everyone in a family will feel the same way about a guest as the one who issued the invitation. It's an awkward truth, but it's there. Sometimes, a friend might invite us over with the best of intentions, perhaps out of habit or just to be polite, without checking in with their spouse or the rest of the family. We might show up, excited for a good conversation, only to sense a chill in the air. There's a glance from a son-in-law, a sigh from a daughter, a hurried clearing of the kitchen table. The realization dawns: our visit, meant to be a gesture of warmth and goodwill, has created discomfort instead. No one wants to be a burden, least of all in the homes of people we care about. There are stories in every community that echo this experience. Maybe you know someone like Uncle Mike, who moved into a retirement complex not far from his old neighborhood. In the early days, Mike loved reconnecting with an old high school buddy he'd bumped into at the local grocery store. At first, the visits were joyful: a couple of beers, a game on TV, reminiscing about the good old days. But soon, Mike noticed that his friend's wife would disappear whenever he came over, and the laughter around the dinner table didn't quite reach her eyes. Eventually, the friend admitted that his family found the frequent visits disruptive. It stung, but it was also a wake-up call. Good intentions don't always make for good company. The truth is, visiting in old age is a delicate matter. Our days are often built around routines that help us manage aches, medications, meals, and energy levels. Even small disruptions can have outsized effects, throwing off sleep schedules, interfering with rest, or simply making us more tired than we'd planned. And then there's the challenge of mobility. Stairs that once felt like nothing now seem steeper, unfamiliar bathrooms can be stressful, and just getting there and back can sap our strength for days. There's also the matter of conversation. In youth, we could talk for hours about anything and nothing at all. But as we age, we become more careful with our words, aware of how easily misunderstandings can grow into lasting hurt. Gatherings, especially among old friends or extended family, can sometimes veer into gossip or touch on sensitive topics. Finances, health, family disagreements. A careless remark about a daughter-in-law or a neighbor's habits can spiral into real pain. Many seniors remember these moments all too well. An offhand comment, repeated in the wrong ears, can create wounds that last for years. It's no wonder, then, that some would rather avoid the risk altogether. Another quiet factor is the growing difference in lifestyles and finances that becomes more obvious with age. Even among old friends, economic differences can create a gap that's hard to bridge. One friend's newly remodeled kitchen, another's well-kept garden, or even just the cars in the driveway, these differences can stir up feelings of pride, jealousy, or discomfort. The person with less might feel self-conscious, while the one with more might feel pressured to downplay their blessings. These are not easy emotions to talk about, so instead, many simply choose not to put themselves in those situations. Festive occasions, which once meant open houses and neighbors dropping in all day long, have also changed. Where people once looked forward to house-to-house visits on New Year's Day or Thanksgiving, now many prefer to stay home, scroll through their phones, or enjoy a quiet meal with just a handful of family members. Life, after all, can feel exhausting enough without the added pressure of entertaining or being entertained. For some, this is a sign that our hearts have grown colder. For others, it's simply an honest acknowledgement of our changing needs. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Another reason seniors may avoid visiting others' homes is out of respect. Having lived long enough to know how much effort hosting takes, we'd rather not add to someone else's workload or disrupt their peace. We remember all the times we had to clean, cook, and prepare for company, even when we didn't feel like it, and now we prefer to save our friends from that burden. If we do want to meet, it feels kinder to suggest a neutral place, a quiet cafe, a park bench, a community center, where no one has to worry about dishes or dust bunnies. Yet for all these practical and emotional reasons, the decision to visit less does not mean withdrawing from life. If anything, it's about choosing our interactions with greater care. We still value companionship and warmth, but we look for ways to enjoy those things without stress or obligation. A phone call, a handwritten note, a short visit outside the home can mean just as much, sometimes more, than a long afternoon spent as a house guest. In the end, avoiding visits is not about closing ourselves off from the world. It's about living wisely and honoring the limits and lessons that come with age. It's about recognizing that relationships can flourish without constant physical presence, and that peace, comfort, and dignity are treasures worth protecting. We have learned, sometimes the hard way, that life is too short for forced smiles and awkward goodbyes. We choose instead to nurture the connections that bring us joy, in ways that fit the life we live now. If that means fewer visits and more quiet days at home, so be it. The love, respect, and warmth we carry for our friends and family do not depend on how often we cross each other's thresholds. They live in the heart, in every memory, and every thoughtful gesture, no matter where we happen to be. 4. Economic disparity and psychological imbalance among the elderly in communities. In the quiet rhythm of later life, when the days seem slower and the world outside feels somehow more distant, there's an unexpected challenge that often creeps in. One that's easy to overlook but can weigh heavily on the heart. It isn't just about health, mobility, or even loneliness. Instead, it's the subtle but persistent presence of economic disparity, the differences in financial circumstances between neighbors and friends, and the emotional ripple effects those differences can create within a community of older adults. When we were young, it seemed like everyone around us was in the same boat. Most of us worked similar jobs, lived in similar houses, and sent our children to the same schools. Our communities felt tight-knit, built on a foundation of shared experience and, for the most part, similar means. But as we age, the differences that once felt small begin to grow more noticeable. Some of our friends prospered, others faced hardships. Luck, timing, health, family, or just the unpredictable turns of life. The reasons are countless, and sometimes beyond anyone's control. These differences reveal themselves in simple, everyday moments. You might visit an old friend in the same retirement community and notice their condo has been recently remodeled, filled with the latest gadgets and beautiful furnishings. Meanwhile, you struggle to keep up with basic repairs, stretching your fixed income to cover rising grocery bills and prescription costs. At lunch, the conversation might turn to travel plans or new hobbies, cruises, golf memberships, even second homes, while you quietly count every dollar, worrying about medical bills or helping a grandchild with tuition. It's not that anyone means to show off or to make others feel less fortunate. Most of the time, these differences come out naturally, without malice or intention. But even so, they can leave a sting. In a community where everyone is supposed to be enjoying their golden years, these reminders of what we have, and what we don't, can create silent divides. For many older adults, these disparities foster a subtle but real sense of psychological imbalance. The wealthy may feel awkward about discussing their good fortune, afraid of appearing boastful or insensitive. Those with less may feel a nagging sense of inadequacy, embarrassment, or even shame. These emotions, though rarely spoken aloud, are powerful enough to keep neighbors at arm's length. Sometimes, people withdraw from group activities or avoid social invitations, worried about being judged for what they lack or being exposed to reminders of what they cannot afford. It's human nature to compare ourselves to others, even when we know better. Over time, those comparisons can erode confidence and well-being. A friend's new car in the driveway, their ability to dine out regularly, or even their wardrobe choices become constant, visible reminders of financial gaps. What might have once been casual, easy friendships can feel tinged with discomfort or distance. The sense of community that once brought comfort now feels fragile, built on foundations that can easily be shaken by unspoken resentments. Sometimes the effects of these disparities extend beyond private feelings and impact community life. In some retirement villages or senior living complexes, there may be cliques. One group who can afford the amenities and outings, and another who quietly sits out the expensive events. Community meetings might be dominated by discussions about improvements or activities that not everyone can afford, creating subtle pressure to keep up or, worse, to quietly bow out. A once inclusive environment starts to feel divided by invisible lines. The holidays are especially difficult. While some are decorating lavishly, exchanging expensive gifts, or traveling to visit family in far-off places, others are scaling back, opting for handmade cards, simple meals, or celebrating alone. Invitations to parties can feel more like obligations, reminders of a life that feels increasingly out of reach. This economic gap isn't always about extravagance or poverty. Even small differences, a subscription service, a cleaning lady, or a monthly dinner out, can create a psychological wedge. Over time, these minor contrasts add up, shaping our perceptions of ourselves and our relationships. It's not just about money. It's about dignity, self-worth, and the desire to belong. Most people want to be seen for who they are, not what they own or can afford. But when economic disparity becomes obvious, it can cast a shadow over even the closest friendships. Resentment can creep in, sometimes quietly and unconsciously. The friend with less might wonder if they're being pitied or if they're seen as a charity case. The friend with more may feel the burden of expectation, unsure how to be generous without offending or creating dependence. So how do we cope with these feelings and preserve the sense of community that is so vital in our later years? For many, it starts with honesty, with ourselves and with each other. It's important to remember that everyone has their own story, and that outward appearances rarely tell the whole truth. The neighbor who seems well off may have their struggles, hidden behind closed doors. The friend who seems to have little may be rich in ways that don't show up on a balance sheet: resilience, wisdom, kindness, or family ties. Some communities actively work to bridge these gaps, organizing activities that don't cost a dime: book clubs, walking groups, potluck dinners, or volunteer projects that bring everyone together, regardless of means. These moments of shared purpose and enjoyment can go a long way toward rebuilding trust and mutual respect. On an individual level, it helps to practice gratitude for what we have and to resist the urge to measure ourselves against others. True friendship is built on empathy and understanding, not on shared bank accounts or matching lifestyles. When we focus on the qualities that matter, loyalty, humor, patience, generosity, we can begin to close the emotional distance that economic disparity tries to create. For those who are comfortable, a quiet sensitivity can make all the difference. Being mindful of how we talk about our good fortune, making invitations inclusive, and looking for opportunities to connect on a human level rather than a financial one, all of these actions foster warmth and belonging. For those who are struggling, it's important to reach out rather than withdraw, to trust that the people who matter most will value our presence more than our presence. Life has taught us all to weather storms. Sometimes, sharing those stories and vulnerabilities is the very thing that brings us closer. Economic disparity will likely always exist, but it doesn't have to define our later years or the relationships we cherish. With a little care, a little honesty, and a lot of heart, we can choose to see one another for the whole of who we are. In doing so, we reclaim the true spirit of community. One built not on what we have, but on how we care for each other, especially as the world around us continues to change. 5. Changing social traditions and preference for peaceful living. There's a unique kind of wisdom that quietly settles into our lives as the years go by, a wisdom shaped not by what we have accumulated, but by what we choose to let go. Nowhere is this more visible than in the changing ways we mark traditions and celebrate life's milestones. The holidays and rituals that once filled our calendars with excitement and anticipation have, for many of us, become softer, simpler, and even optional. This shift, though subtle at first, reflects something profound: a growing preference for peace, comfort, and authenticity over the hustle and bustle of old social customs. Think back to those earlier decades. Every major holiday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, the 4th of July, meant elaborate preparations, houses cleaned from top to bottom, and kitchens bursting with food. The whole family would arrive, sometimes with neighbors and friends in tow. Gifts were exchanged, stories shared, and laughter rolled through the rooms late into the night. There was a sense of obligation, but also of joy, a belief that these gatherings were the glue holding our families and communities together. But as the years passed, the world around us sped up. Families became more scattered, with children moving states away and friends growing busy with their own lives. Social media and smartphones started to replace phone calls and handwritten invitations. Many of us have watched as beloved traditions quietly faded. No more neighborhood block parties, fewer holiday cards in the mailbox, and shorter guest lists at family gatherings. What once seemed non-negotiable began to feel negotiable, even optional. For many older adults, these changes come with mixed emotions. There's nostalgia for the way things were, a longing for the warmth and bustle of a house full of people. Yet there's also relief. As energy wanes and mobility becomes a consideration, the thought of orchestrating a big event or even traveling across town can feel daunting. Sometimes, the pressure to keep up appearances or meet expectations overshadows the actual joy of the occasion. The truth is, what we often crave now is not the noise or spectacle, but the peace and meaning that can be found in smaller, quieter moments. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. It's not just about physical limitations, either. With age comes a new kind of discernment, a sharpened sense of what brings genuine joy and what feels like empty obligation. We learn to say no to what no longer serves us. Some may see this as a loss, but for many, it's an act of self-respect. We recognize that our time and energy are precious, and we become selective about how we spend them. The holidays are a good example. Instead of throwing ourselves into a whirlwind of shopping, cooking, and decorating, many of us have come to prefer a simple meal shared with a few loved ones, or even a quiet day spent in reflection. A heartfelt phone call, a thoughtful letter, or a homemade treat can mean far more than the most expensive present or the grandest party. This shift doesn't diminish the meaning of the holiday. Instead, it can deepen it, allowing us to focus on gratitude and connection rather than stress and spectacle. There's also a changing attitude towards social obligations in general. Where once we might have felt guilty about declining an invitation or scaling back our participation, we now permit ourselves to put our well-being first. If attending a noisy dinner feels overwhelming, or hosting a house full of guests seems like too much, it's okay to opt out. This isn't selfishness. It's wisdom. We've learned that peace is not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of comfort and authenticity in our daily lives. Technology has helped in some ways, making it easier to stay connected without leaving home. A video call with a grandchild or a friend across the country can fill our hearts just as much as a visit in person. For some, the quiet companionship of an online book club or a weekly email exchange replaces the need for constant in-person gatherings. These new ways of connecting might lack the warmth of a hug or the chaos of a full house, but they fit more comfortably with the pace and preferences of later life. All of these changes point to a larger shift in values, a move away from tradition for tradition's sake, and toward a way of living that is peaceful, meaningful, and genuine. We're no longer chasing after approval, nor are we bound by the expectations of others. We accept that life changes, and with it, our rituals and relationships do too. This new preference for peaceful living is not without its challenges. There are moments of loneliness, especially when memories of louder, busier times return. The world can sometimes feel too quiet, and the absence of old rituals can sting. Yet there is also a tremendous freedom in letting go of what no longer fits. In this spaciousness, we find room to reflect, to nurture our well-being, and to appreciate the small joys that fill our days. Morning sunlight through the window, a good book, a favorite song, or the taste of fresh brewed coffee. Many of us now seek out nature, rediscovering the healing power of a walk in the park, time spent tending a garden, or simply sitting outside and watching the seasons change. Others find peace in hobbies that they never had enough time for before: painting, woodworking, knitting, or writing letters to friends. There's pleasure in the slow, deliberate pace of these activities, in the way they allow us to savor the present without worrying about the next event or obligation. Most importantly, this changing attitude toward tradition and socializing helps us focus on what truly matters: genuine connection, not surface-level interaction. We learn to cherish the relationships that bring us comfort and joy, even if they're fewer than before. We value honest conversation over small talk, and quality time with a few loved ones over big, noisy gatherings. If there's one gift that comes with age, it's the clarity to know what makes us happy, and the courage to pursue it. Choosing peace doesn't mean turning our backs on the world, but instead, embracing a life that fits us now. It means recognizing that sometimes the most meaningful moments happen not at a crowded party, but in the quiet of our own company or the laughter of a shared memory. In letting go of old traditions that no longer serve us, we create space for new ones. Ones that are gentler, more authentic, and attuned to who we've become. We honor the past, but we also celebrate the present, finding joy in simplicity and solace in peace. So as the world around us continues to change, and as the traditions of our youth fade into memory, we can take comfort in knowing that the best parts of life are not behind us. They're right here, in the small, everyday moments of contentment and calm we've worked so hard to create. In the end, the real tradition is learning to live peacefully, cherishing each day for the quiet gift that it is. As I sit here, letting my thoughts wander over the many seasons of life, I realize how much has changed, and yet, how much remains beautifully constant. Growing older has taught me that it's not the size of the crowd around us, nor the noise of the festivities, but the peace and authenticity in our hearts that truly matter. I've watched old friendships shift, felt traditions soften, and embraced a quieter kind of happiness that feels right for these years. There's comfort in solitude now, a deep sense of gratitude for the slow mornings, the simple pleasures, and the memories that drift in and out like gentle breezes. I think about the friends who have come and gone, the family traditions that have been reshaped, and the way I've learned to find joy in ordinary days. Life is richer, somehow, when we choose to let go of what no longer serves us and make room for what brings us peace. Each moment of solitude is not a loss, but a gift, a chance to rest, to reflect, and to cherish the few true connections that remain. And as we continue this journey, perhaps the most important lesson is to honor who we are now and to embrace each day with gentleness and acceptance. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What is one lesson you've learned in your journey that you'd like to carry forward? Please share in the comments below. And if you found comfort or inspiration here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we can build a community where every voice matters, and no one ever truly feels alone.